Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our members of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position along with your favorite beverage to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion today, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience at SmithWeekly, including Luke A., Gordon S., and Cindy W. Colin Moore is a new guest on the program today. Colin is the president and CEO of Westward Gold, a Nevada, United States focused gold exploration company with properties in the Battle Mountain, Eureka region, north central Nevada. The company is listed on the Canadian Securities Exchange under the symbol WG and also on the US OTC markets under the symbol WGLIF. Colin, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me. Pleasure to be on.
Absolutely, Colin. It's good to meet and chat Westward Gold here. Well, this is an introduction program, and Westward is quite new to me. But, Colin, first, how do you look at the junior gold exploration market?
Yeah, and it's there's a wide spectrum of options for investors out there. I bet there's probably 1,000 different publicly listed companies that are exploring for commodities in one form or another in one jurisdiction or another. I came from an engineering and investment banking and private equity background, so most of my professional career has been spent on the investor side of things. So it's this is my first foray into the issuer side, and it's it's not the easiest. It's a risky business, even without the macro headwinds that we've been facing in the junior space recently. So how we look at it is we try and put together a compelling story and mitigate external risks as best you can, because we are an early stage explorer. So some of those strategies for mitigating risk, including being in a very safe and well endowed jurisdiction in Nevada, very mining friendly, lots of skilled labor, lots of infrastructure. On the commodity side, gold is never going to go out of favor, at least in my opinion. And on the team side, surrounding ourselves with industry veterans who have made successful discoveries in the past. So I think the way we look at it is if you have all those factors in play, there you really maximize your chances for success.
Before we get into an overview of Westward, elaborate a little bit more on the market conditions we're seeing, right here in front of us over the last few months, and what you see for exploration companies in this sector going forward. What is your outlook for this segment? The small, very tiny cap exploration companies, listed in Canada. What does your outlook say over the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, and to be honest, I mean, stepping back and looking at the macro picture, I think all of the factors, the traditional factors that should be favorable for gold specifically and commodities in general in an inflationary environment, I think they're all there. That being said, with the Fed potentially orchestrating a hard landing here, I think we're in a risk-off environment. There's a flight to cash, and that's affected all asset classes. But it's really affected those, as you say, the micro caps, the small market cap, junior explorers. I think have been more beaten up than other asset classes. Looking at our peers, a lot of them are down 50, 60, 70% year to date. And that, I think that's a function of these are risky assets. So in a risk off environment, they're going to be sold off, and we're not immune to that. We've been actively trying to get the word out. I think eventually the cream rises to the top, but we've been trading about sideways year to date, and it's been a struggle. So trying to do everything right on the ground, obviously, in a business that doesn't generate any revenue. The only source of capital you have is raising equity, and you can get yourself in a lot of trouble at these levels. Trying to raise cash at these depressed share prices obviously causes dilution that limits upside in the long run. So we're trying to be very diligent with our burn rate, but at the same time, the best way we think to unlock shareholder value is by putting money into the ground and advancing our projects. So kind of a long-winded way to say It's been tough here, but I am optimistic about the next 6 to 12 months. I think once the dust settles and people start looking around and see that, gold as an asset class has held its own probably better than others. And then looking down at the equities, especially the junior equities, some of these names have been so beaten up that they're just, compelling valuations here. So I'm hopeful that once we get through probably a very slow summer, low volumes traditionally, going into the fall, which tends to be a good time of the year for junior explorers, I think the next 6 to 12 months should be a little bit brighter than what we've seen over the last 6 months.
Yeah, certainly the market's been tough here, very challenging, and then also a delayed fuse on commodities and certainly things like gold that most people would probably expect it to move earlier, although gold from a price standpoint's done pretty well. It's just been how much patience do you have, I think, is the question. And certainly that there's a good move headed forward and it's going to be to the right side. But we'll see what happens here over the next 6 to 12 months and see how that deleveraging continues to happen across all market sectors. Why don't we kick it off here on Westward with a quick overview of the company and what the immediate objective is, Colin?
Absolutely, yeah. So Westward is a fairly new story. I've been involved with Westward for about a year, almost a year exactly, when my private company Momentum Minerals Limited was bought by the public company that is now Westward. We changed our name. It used to be IM Exploration, but now we're Westward Gold. So it's been about a year-long journey, really assembling this land package that is pretty compelling based on the location and its size, and the geological features we're seeing that give us a lot of optimism. So it's 40 square kilometers in the heart of the Battle Mountain Eureka Trend. We're in what I like to call Barrick's backyard, so we're a short distance away from some of their most important producing mines in the state. That includes Pipeline and Cortez Hills. Gold Rush is also nearby. So we're in the right location here. And our land package, we like to think of them as three distinct projects, even though there are no gaps in our land package. It's a fully contiguous piece of land. Our most advanced asset is called Toyabe, and that's the one that we are currently drilling. We have permits in place to drill that, obviously. It has a small historical resource that was put out by prior operators in 2009. That's not the big prize for us, but it does give us kind of a backstop of value and lets us know that there is, we are sitting on a gold system of some kind here. And that was 173,000 ounces at an average grade of 1.2 grams per ton. So obviously the size isn't there yet, but the grade is quite promising. For a shallow deposit in Nevada, 1.2 grams is pretty high. So really what we're trying to do now is prove out the lateral extent of that deposit. So we're in the middle of a drill program right now. We're doing 15 holes, about 15,000 feet or just over 4,000 meters. I just got back from site, checking out the rigs. We're on hole number 6 out of 15 right now, so it's humming along. And obviously for a company like us, drilling is the biggest catalyst for value, either to the upside or to the downside. I think that's going to be really important to show the market. And these targets that we're testing are fairly large step outs from outside of the resource. So we're testing new theories. I think a lot of the prior drilling kind of missed, and there's a lot of geological reasons for that being the case. But yeah, so we have no shortage of targets. We're still only scratching the surface of our total land package, and we're quite optimistic as to how this is going to turn out.
Colin, talk about the capital structure, cover the shares outstanding here for us, the cash on hand, major shareholders, including yourself.
So right now we have about 68 million shares out. That is on a basic level. We have about 25 million warrants outstanding from prior financings. Those are all out of the money right now. Strikes at 20 cents and 25 cents. I think today we're trading at 13 cents. By the way, this is all Canadian. On any given day, we're between a 7, 8, 9 million market cap Canadian. We just did a financing in February. We raised about $2.5 million at 12 cents. Of that, 1.3 million was earmarked for our drill campaign. So most of that has been spent to this point. I think, looking at our budget right now, coming out of when we expect to get the assay results back from that drill program, which should be kind of mid-August, we're probably going to have around 700,000 cash on hand. Obviously, the summertime, the field season is the biggest time for us, so that's where our burn rate is the highest. Going into the winter, we have very few people. There's only 3 of us in active management, myself, our CFO, and our VP of Exploration, Dave Browning, who's down in Reno, Nevada full time. So we can keep our burn rate fairly low. In terms of my personal shareholding, I'm at about 1.7 million shares. Management and directors and insiders in total are the largest group of shareholders. We're at about 22%. A couple of other mining companies are shareholders, and that was a function of the transactions we did to build this land package. So Starcore International Mines, they're at about 6%. We did a deal with them for our flagship Toyabe. First Mining Gold, they're at about 2%. We did a deal with them for our secondary asset called Turquoise Canyon. And MinQuest, they're a private mining company, but they're also a 2% shareholder. We did a deal. They're the underlying optioner on Toyabe. We have a lot of industry vets and well-known guys who are shareholders who have been participating privately in our rounds. Not all of them like to be named, but one guy I can name is Keith Newmeyer. He's the CEO of First Majestic Silver. He's also the chairman of First Mining Gold, well-known silver investor, fairly active out there on social media and well-known in investment circles. So he's about a 1% shareholder, and he's been supporting us since the days when this was private, actually. So he's participated in the private rounds and just recently participated in our last public round as well.
Colin, on the financing end there, maybe just talk about what you guys see here as when you could finance again. Do you guys expect to come with some results here and hopefully capitalize on the back of that news, with the capital and coming into the winter time after your program this summer? When do you guys see that you'll be raising capital again?
Yeah, so in an ideal world, we would come out with strong assay results, and the market would start to turn in the fall, and then ideally we would capitalize on that, and we would try and raise money on the back of that. That being said, if September, October rolls around and the market is still just in the doldrums, nobody's paying attention to the sector, and we were facing a pretty dilutive event by financing, I think, we have the ability to wait it out for several months, for better market conditions. I don't like to pretend to know how to time the ideal financing window. So we'll probably try and err on the side of caution. And to be honest, if we need a stopgap financing and the markets are just completely, apathetic to the sector, we can pass the hat around between management directors, and we can do a financing just with insiders and with supportive shareholders. So we're going to stay pragmatic about it, but a long way to answer your question. Yes, ideally we would finance in the fall in a better market on the back of good assay results.
Very well. Yeah, it's always tough to get that timing right. Just back on shareholders, and what else do you have to say about yourself, the board, and the rest of the management team, and how you are aligned with shareholders here?
Yeah, we're putting our money where our mouth is, and I think we've attracted at the board level and at the technical advisory level, we've attracted some guys who've been around 20, 30, 40 years doing this. So in our last financing, I think the group as a total put in about $400,000 into this financing. Obviously, we're also incentivized with some options. Really, we're not looking to make money via any other method other than equity appreciation here. That's going to be the big win for us, right? None of us has sold a single share since we've started owning. We're going to be accumulating more. I think everyone's kind of indicated their willingness and their commitment to participate in every equity raise that we do in the future. So in terms of alignment, I think that's what you want to see as a retail shareholder.
Okay, let's move into Toyabe. Talk about that project a little bit more here. What is some of the expectations that you guys see would be coming out of this drill program? And then, given the region, given what some of your technical expertise has on the project here, and some of the folks in internal discussion, what are the expectations with this project? And do you guys see, of the three projects in Nevada, Turquoise Canyon and East Saddle, do you guys see that this has the most potential to grow into a larger deposit that could become economic?
As I mentioned, Toyabe has seen a fair amount of past drilling, but it was really limited in its scope and its breadth of thinking. So we have that historical resource, about 170,000 ounces. So their thinking was they were looking for a sister deposit to the past producing mine that sits right on our property boundary called the Toyabe Saddle Mine. That was mined in the late 80s and early 90s. It was an open pit heap leach operation, fairly small just compared to all the other mines in the region, but really, really close to our property boundary. And what we're thinking, the expectations coming out of this drill program is that we're gonna hit some widespread mineralization outside of the areas of traditional drilling, which were really confined to a small area. If you look in the context of the 40 square kilometers that we have, it was probably half a square kilometer, if that, the footprint of this resource. And they went very shallow. They were looking for a simple open pit, very shallow RC, kind of Swiss cheese in that area of the historical resource. So we don't really see much value going back into that area. What we want to do is prove that there's a lateral extent of the mineralization and also go a bit deeper. We're looking for what's called a Carlin type deposit. So that's what, the major mines in Nevada, they're all Carlin type deposits, including the Barrick mines that I mentioned earlier on, that produce, 1+% of the world's gold come out of those mines every year. So the indications that we have, just based on our review of past drilling, is that the gold mineralization in this area is structurally controlled. So it's hosted in these faults, which kind of act like the plumbing for the gold. So we're seeing these high grade structures near surface, and the very few holes that went a little bit deeper, and not even that deep in the context of a lot of these holes that people are drilling. I'm talking like 300 meters ish, so about 1,000 feet. So once they get down to kind of the 200 meter mark, we're starting to see wider intervals, so 40 meters plus at a gram plus, so more widespread disseminated gold. And that's very typical in these Carlin type systems. You have high grade structures near surface, and then you have proverbial sea of gold deeper, the feeder zone. So we're really looking to tap into that, because that's when you can start talking about multi-million ounce potential, when you have widespread tabular disseminated gold over several square kilometers. The goal of this program really is to be a stepping stone towards a larger program. If our theories prove true out of this, then we want to really hit the ground with a more aggressive campaign, and eventually move on to Turquoise Canyon. So that's our secondary asset that sits to the east of Toyabe. So we have a few targets that are really close to the boundary line with Turquoise Canyon. So we're kind of systematically stepping away from the known into the unknown. And Turquoise Canyon, I think for us, it represents some good blue sky potential, because amazingly for Nevada, it's never been drilled before, which is shocking to me, just based on its proximity to other deposits and mines, and the fact that it's got some good geological indications at surface. And we've done about everything else you can do prior to sinking drill holes at Turquoise Canyon. We've done IP, we've done airborne surveys, we've done soil samples, rock samples. So a lot of good targets that we're keen to get onto at Turquoise Canyon, after obviously examining the data we get back from this current drill campaign.
And how about East Saddle here? Is that something that would maybe see some work next year, Colin? Any immediate plans with East Saddle?
East Saddle is our freshest property, and that was we staked that ourselves. That was kind of a result of we had a field trip with some of the technical directors and the technical advisory board in the fall, and they noticed this ground, south of our other two properties. At surface looks like the favorable host rock, the same host rock that had the past producing mine and hosts our deposit. So we had our eye on that ground for a while. We're hoping to pick it up. So once I think it was an oil and gas company owned some of those claims. I think they were looking for barite or something like that. But they dropped those claims and we jumped on them. So 101 claims that increased our land position by about 30%. So that's our most underdeveloped project to date. There's no indications, and we've looked at the records to see if there's been any real exploration work done there, and it doesn't appear that there has been. So we are starting to do work, preliminary work on that project, mostly just mapping. We got our geos out on site, walking the ground. So that'll be the first step, is mapping, and then we can talk about doing some rock chip sampling, some soil sampling, really just building the foundation on that project, because we do intend to advance it. But most of the major work will be at Toyabi and Turquoise Canyon, while we prep East Saddle for some more serious work in future campaigns.
Understood. I appreciate you covering that one as well. Talk about general project M&A in Nevada. What activity are you seeing out there that you want to highlight? And then also for Westward, is there continuing consideration for acquisition of new projects in Nevada or maybe elsewhere? What are you looking for here? And just talk about the M&A situation in Nevada.
Part of the impetus for wanting to be in Nevada is because it's a highly desirable jurisdiction. There's been a trend over the last several years, even maybe longer than that, of companies who have been operating in riskier jurisdictions wanting to get a foothold in Nevada. So I think the jurisdiction commands a premium, and I think that the most recent example would be Gold Standard Ventures getting bought out. First Majestic coming in with Jarrett Canyon, Anglo buying Corvus. There's a lot of companies that are frankly probably sick and tired of the geopolitical BS they have to deal with in some of these other countries, and saying, if we'd be sitting pretty in Nevada, we wouldn't have to worry about that aspect of the business, and then we could focus on the project level and generating value there. So I think from an M&A perspective, if we can prove out the potential of the project, being in Nevada will command a premium down the road. For us personally, looking at being more acquisitive down the road, I think that's a function. We're always looking. We have guys on the team that live in Nevada, that hear all the whispers. They know what's available, what's not available. So we are building out a database of potential other projects that we'd be interested in. For a company of our size, we obviously want to limit dilution. So it comes down to our share capital, how much currency we have in that regard, and if we can negotiate a favorable price. We do want to grow both organically and through M&A. But right now we kind of have our hands full with the 3 projects and the ongoing program. So we always have our ear to the ground, but we're going to be fairly price sensitive at this point, and just trying to execute on what's directly in front of us.
So how about this Molloy project in Ontario? What's the plan there? Are you looking to JV that out? Are you looking to sell it outright, keep it? Talk about that one as well.
That one was a holdover from the precursor company, which was called IM Exploration, and that was their listing asset. So it is interesting in its own right, but I don't think it compares to what we're seeing in Nevada. That one's non-core for us. I think we'd like to focus all of our money and human resources down in Nevada. So we'll probably look to do something on that fairly shortly. I think either looking at someone else taking it on, or potential JV, but something that we can really be hands off on it, because all of our focus is going to be in Nevada. That's our flagship right now. I should note, just to be clear, that we don't own that property. That was under option.
Okay, that's great. I appreciate the clarification on that. And maybe talk about just the overall company strategy, Colin. We've seen a number of companies over the years, Gold Standard Ventures and a number of others, come into this region. There's a lot of competition in Nevada. What do you see as the strategy? How long do you think it will take to execute that strategy in terms of years? And do you see that this is, discover, advance a deposit to where it's possible to get bought out? My suspicion is for this stage of company, that would be the goal. But, just talk about the bigger, broader strategy, Colin, and how long you think it would take to execute out that strategy.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. None of us want to be mine builders at this point. We want to prove up the potential of this project, put a nice bow on it, and then ideally have someone come in and take it off our hands. Creating some really good upside for our shareholders. And in terms of timing, it really depends on how much money we're able to raise and how the market looks. If we can go out and raise a sizable amount of money on the back of a strong market and strong results, and we can get more aggressive with our drilling. The current campaign is kind of a starter campaign. It's 15 holes, so it's nothing to sneeze at. But this project deserves a lot more than that. So if we can go out and get some backing with some strong shareholders and good amounts of money and go after this thing more aggressively, then we can obviously tighten up that timeline. I think to get a potential acquirer interested, we need to be talking about over 1 million ounces, and over 1 million ounces in Nevada. If the grade's there, I think that becomes very attractive, not only to a producer, but some of these larger developers that have been accumulating land in the area. So that's the basic strategy is grow the resource. We'd like to put out a new resource, a new compliant resource. That probably won't be achieved post this drill campaign because we just need a greater volume of drilling. But if we can raise money and then next year hit the ground even harder with double, triple, quadruple the size of the drill campaign, then we can put out a compliant resource and make it attractive and just continue to advance the asset and generate some buzz, and then hopefully get some interest from acquirers down the road.
Very well. I appreciate that. And hopefully progress is made there, Colin, and you guys can see that to actually result in a good amount of value for everybody involved. For potential investors who are listening in, Colin, Westward Gold stands at about 7 million Canadian market cap. What would you say to those that are listening about the opportunity with this exploration stage company?
Yeah, all I would say is, this is the time to get positioned if you want to participate in the potential upside, a re-rating event coming out of the drill program, assuming the assays are good. I would caveat that by saying, obviously, this is high risk. This is a high risk investment, and that's why people like to have these types of, I don't want to say binary, but kind of not related to the overall market. If you can make a discovery here, regardless of how the broader market is moving, we should re-rate here. And we've traded as high as a 20 million market cap in a better environment, in a better market. We were at 30 plus cents at one point, and our chart since then, since the summer of 21, has mimicked a lot of our peers. You could stack up all our peers against us, and the charts all look the same, unfortunately in the wrong direction. But for those shareholders who are patient, who are looking for potential big re-rating and a 2, 3, 4x, we've seen that time and time again with some of these explorers. One drill hole can add many, many millions to a market cap, especially when you're starting from such a basement level. We're on the ground floor here in terms of valuation. And even just the ground that we have in Nevada by itself, I would argue that in a better market, that could be worth $15 million. Outsized potential returns here, and having this as kind of a small part of your portfolio on the riskier side of the portfolio, some investors like to have that exposure.
Well, I certainly appreciate you underscoring the high risk part of it. Not too many people do that, so I appreciate that. And how about the best way for investors to contact the company?
You can go on our website. You can contact us via there. You can sign up for our news to your inbox. Info@westwardgold.com is a good resource. We check that email, and any investors who would like a little bit more detail or would like to set up a phone call or a meeting with management, more than happy to have a chat about that.
Well, Colin, appreciate the introduction and the time here. Keep up the good progress there, and best of luck on Westward and the projects.
Thanks so much. Appreciate the time.